What if you could do more to source your food in ways that save you money, build community, give you access to fresher, higher quality food, and reduce your support of greedy corporations? With so many of us understandably frustrated and concerned about the rising costs of food, I thought this could be a good time to share the strategies my boyfriend Albert and I use to eat really well while rarely going out to restaurants, shopping at grocery stores, or even spending money on food. We've essentially created a completely different model for how we source what we eat. And it's a model built largely on connections to community and nature, creativity and resourcefulness, some basic cooking skills, and a good bit of dumpster diving and other waste stream diversion activities. What I'd especially like to underscore here is all of the reciprocity, sharing, and gift economy interactions embedded in all of this. Also, Albert and I very openly discuss our dumpster diving scores with our friends and people we interact with, as well as our concern about the tremendous amounts of still edible food that regularly enters the waste stream. That's led to numerous friends asking us to take them dumpster diving with us so they can try it out. One friend in particular, who lives closer to the stores than we do, has started dumpster diving regularly, and often brings us some of the extra food she's rescued when she's headed to our part of town. And that's on top of distributing it to a lot of her friends that are in need. Let's look at this typical comfort food meal that Albert made for us. The meat was rescued by our dumpster happy friend, and the potatoes and the carrots in the slaw were things we rescued ourselves. And the main ingredient in that slaw is fresh green papaya, which Albert grows in his own food forest. He's also perfected a simple dressing for it that makes it taste so good. And in the bottle is kombucha that Albert brewed himself using Yopon holly leaves that he grew instead of green or black tea. A few years ago, Albert gifted a bunch of his green papayas to our friend who runs St. Pete Ferments so she could make some pickled papayas, and in return she gifted us a half a case of the final product. We also forage lots of fallen fruits and connect with neighbors when we see delicious tropical fruits on the ground not being harvested in their yards. We offer to pick the fruit and share the harvest with them, and a number of people have taken us up on that. We've also bartered with people for their fruit. Then we have lots of fruit to eat ourselves, gift, and barter with others. Being so open about our dumpster diving and concern for food waste led to Albert and me meeting someone who works at our local natural grocery store. It was through him that we learned about this grocery industry concept of shrink, which is when items in a store's inventory end up not being sold for various reasons and need to be discarded. At this particular store, the staff are allowed to take these items home. When our friend gets these items, he barters with us. We've given him a copy of my book, jars of Albert's honey, and produce from Albert's garden. Much of what we receive from this friend is dairy, so lots of milk and yogurt. Most recently, Albert's been experimenting making homemade ice cream with it in the 2 used ice cream makers that people have gifted him for his Garden Grandpa program that he leads at the library. He's very excited about making ice cream with the kids, and I have to say, I am loving these experiments. And a lot of what we eat comes from our gardens or our friends' gardens. Meals are often served on a bed of homegrown greens, or topped with fresh herbs, or sprinkled with moringa powder. You don't even have to have a garden to experience garden fresh food. Many community gardens need volunteers and happily send them home with some of the harvest. Just befriending or hanging out more, or even stopping to talk to neighbors that grow their own food can open so many doors. Maybe it's the summer gardeners with their bumper crops of zucchinis and not enough people to share them with. Or people like my friend Sarah who want to share the joy and abundance of their fruit harvests. Being willing to connect and engage can unleash this amazing energy of reciprocity and community. Albert and I haven't completely stopped buying groceries and supporting the destructive industrial food corporations, but we do very little of it. Instead of continuing to support greedy corporations like Kellogg, we've developed an alternative that's a lot more fun, flavorful, fulfilling, and resilient. I realize that not all of this will be accessible or realistic for some of you. But I think each of you can find something in here to start with if you really want to save money on food, do less to fund those greedy corporations, or find more enjoyable and life-enhancing ways to feed yourself and others. Does a rose rescued from a grocery store dumpster smell any differently than a rose procured inside the grocery store? After I retrieved these bouquets while out dumpster diving one night, I rode around on a cold wintry day, at least by Florida standards, gifting them to friends and strangers. It was a great way to spread some unexpected cheer and extend the life of these still lovely flowers that should have never ended up in the dumpster in the first place. That same weekend, I baked a spaghetti squash another dumpster diving friend had rescued and shared with me. I also made nut butter from almonds I'd received from a friend who volunteers at a food bank. Sadly, even our local food pantries often face challenges in getting food to those who need it most. Twice a week, my boyfriend collects the produce scraps from a food bank for his vermicomposting bathtubs. There's almost always some produce in what he picks up that's blemished yet still edible, like these onions and the eggplant. Consider this a reminder that we don't have a food scarcity problem, we have a systemic distribution challenge that we need to collectively address. In the meantime, which bouquet would you choose? Recently at a dinner party where we served food rescued from the waste stream, I had a conversation with a fellow dumpster diver about the importance of normalizing eating the still edible food that's so often thrown away in the U.S. So I thought I'd take a step in that direction by sharing my experience of making raspberries and cream with, you guessed it, food from grocery store dumpsters. I got the idea to make it after finding a flat of raspberries in our local organic grocery store dumpster. Some of them had started to go bad, but most of them were in good shape. I remembered that I had also recently found still cold and still unexpired cream in another store dumpster, where I had also found an unopened container with no label that looked like and indeed turned out to be cane sugar. Raspberries are my favorite fruit. Unfortunately, they don't grow well here in Florida. That makes me all the happier to rescue them, although I'd much rather they didn't end up in the waste stream at all. Since I have a pretty minimalist kitchen and house, I don't even own a lot of kitchen gadgets, so I chose to make the whipped cream in a jar. I added the cream and the sugar and even found some almond extract I had previously scored unopened in a dumpster. I spent about 8 minutes shaking the cream and getting a little physical activity. I even had this packet of pistachios, which was one of a couple that the food bank volunteers had put in the box of food scraps my boyfriend regularly picks up to feed his vermicomposting tubs. We don't have a food scarcity problem. We have a food distribution problem. That's why it's especially unfortunate and frustrating that we need to normalize diverting perfectly good food from the waste stream, and yet it's completely acceptable and barely stigmatized to put it in there in the first place. So would you have eaten these raspberries and cream?